Hello there, and welcome to this, the Savage Balance Podcast. Hello there, everybody. I never know how to get the first hello right. I don't know if maybe other people who do podcasts know this. How do you say the first word? I can't get it right. Sometimes it's too hello and sometimes it's a bit too hello, a bit whispery and throaty. And I think once the first word is out, I'm fine. But other than that, I can't. It's a real struggle for me. Anyway, this is episode number 7 of the Savage Balance Podcast, a place where you can find, what can you find? A mix of, intriguing conversations, some of my own writing, and some wandering, unedited spewing of thoughts. How are you all? I hope that rhetorical question has warmed your hearts. I was going to say cockles, but I don't really know what cockles are, to be honest. I've already been rudely interrupted by my mum as I am in her house in Dartford at the moment. She came greedily just barging in, yelling and shouting and throwing stuff, and actually just to pick up a phone charger. And I didn't tell her I was recording, but it made me embarrassed, so I stopped. And now I've started again and acted pretty cool and casual about it. Also, part of the embarrassment is I'm sitting here with a towel over my head because I thought that would be better for the sound. So that probably didn't help with my emotional mood there. Thank you to all of those people who listened to last week's episode. And thank you for all the messages that people have sent as well. It's very kind words out there. It's definitely been an emotional week, an emotional few weeks. But that's what grief is, I guess, isn't it? For me personally, I found a lot of laughter, a lot of shared laughter at one moment, and then confusion and crying the next, and it just suddenly dawns on you, and it jumps backwards and forwards. But thank you very much to everyone who listened to that. I really appreciate it. This piece for this week is one that I wrote many years ago. It's one of the first 4 I wrote at the end of 2016 when I didn't really know what I was going to be doing with these, but hoped maybe they could become podcasts. It is inspired by real world events, and it was written in Brighton when I was balancing at that time 2 bar jobs, which I'm not anymore, but certainly topical for that time in my life. So without any more yammering on, this is episode number 7, Next to Godliness. Cleanliness is next to godliness. But what if you're an atheist? Cleanliness is next to a meaningless void in which you have to find your own purpose based on scientific teachings and reason. I'm not a naturally clean person. I once trimmed my anal hair with some hairdressing scissors and then unconsciously started snipping away up my nostrils. Yet, I spend a remarkable amount of time cleaning, either at one of my 2 bar jobs or at a local premises as a reluctant volunteer in an unpaid position. My flat. I scrub sticky surfaces that within a matter of minutes will, by their very nature, become sticky again. I'm basically fighting the natural order of time. Everything is in a constant state of decay, and my life is spent in the service of delaying the inevitable. There will be a time long after I'm deceased when the objects, surfaces, and areas I disinfect will dissolve into the void and cease to be part of our observable world. Just a collection of atoms. Time slips between the fibres of my scouring brush. Perhaps cleanliness is next to existentialism. I was sanitizing the kitchen with all the unenthusiasm required and needed a vacuum. I pulled out the red, chubby-faced, branded person-named appliance, and hiding behind him, or it, whatever, I discovered 2 long-forgotten reminders. Reaching into the dust, I pulled from the wreckage some desperately sad and disheartening devices. The first behind the vacuum was a supermarket-branded handheld vacuum cleaner. It was covered in thick dirt, Spots of dried up, rotting food were visible through the transparent cover. Between the layers of grime, the words "Dream Machine" were written on in marker. My partner and I had bought this device in the event of a dry spillage and to quickly tackle condensed areas. If one of us was to cut our hair or knock over a bowl of empty peanut shells, this would save us from having to retrieve the main vacuum. It was to revolutionize our world. The second was an Embark Easy Sweep carpet sweeper. Passed on from a family member, this sweeper was to be on call whenever a small amount of crud would litter the floor, but it was also perfectly suited for carpets and rugs, whereas the handheld could tackle harder surfaces like laminate floors, vinyl sheets, and work surfaces. This wouldn't render the Red-branded vacuum cleaner redundant, as neither rival could cope with tackling an entire flat single-handed. It was to revolutionize our world. As I tentatively began to clean the exterior of the handheld vacuum, I noticed some of the grime was stuck on too tight. To aid me, I switched on the vacuum cleaner and began to suck at the handheld vacuum. And that was it. From that moment on in time, I was now a vacuum cleaner. I was outranked by one of our own vacuums. All these dreams, all these promises. I sat there surrounded by a variety of devices, and they stared back at me, dishevelled, useless, abandoned. Is this the end result of consumerism? Is this where we end up as participants of Western culture? Are we so blindly driven forward by a desire to fill our lives with possessions, distracting us from the real issues that sit at the heart of society, that we would inadvertently end up owning 3 variants of the same product? Perhaps cleanliness is next to materialism in a capitalist regime. I felt this sense something needed to change. I needed to save myself from the trap I was locked in. I needed liberation. Out of sheer desperation, I rushed out the house carrying the 3 appliances. At first I stopped outside the local Anglican church. My mind was racing. If Jesus did heal the sick, he'd probably need a sterile environment to carry out such procedures. I left hastily, worried I might be roped in for a spot of maintenance. Eventually I stumbled across the local Buddhist centre and, in too much of a state to think up a theological rebuttal, I stepped in, hoping for some kind of spiritual salvation. And 30 minutes later, I emerged, a changed man. Cleaning can be a form of meditation. In much the same way as mantra meditation helps mould an altered state of consciousness, the concentration of wiping and descaling offers the same repetitive structure. It gives you the same framework to start from. By having an activity by which to occupy yourself with, you can begin to draw your attention from the exterior slowly into the interior, eventually focusing on your breath and trying to be at one with the moment. This one. Right now. Tibetan monks have a practice in which, as part of their meditation, they'll spend hours or days carefully and patiently sculpting geometric shapes and ancient symbols into sand. Once these patterns are complete and the meditation has ended, they will destroy these images by raking the sand back into its previous state. This is done as a teaching tool and a spiritual exercise in one of Buddhism's 3 marks of existence: impermanence, or anicca. The philosophy that everything in our observable existence, be them material or thought, is subject to decline. Our whole existence is based on the premise of its temporary nature, and our acceptance of this is a step towards relinquishing suffering and ultimately achieving nirvana. I can relate to that concept of suffering, having tried to pick the dried oats out of a housemate's 3-day-old porridge bowl. I felt free to relinquish myself from these distractions, free to embrace the moment, free to defrost the freezer and bleed the radiators. I no longer felt shackled to the floor-cleaning devices. I had practical tools I could offer people, which they may need. I can be of physical help. I could heal broken Britain with my suction force. Now, unfortunately, since writing this, some of you have noticed that Britain is still broken, even though my generous offer had been emphatically accepted. But we're still a work in progress. There are plenty more cupboards, drawers, shelves and boxes to be explored. At least now I can bleach the toilet, undistracted. Maybe cleanliness is next to embracing impermanence. And there we go. That happened. Thank you very much for listening. That was a piece talking about varying religious philosophies through the lens of domestic house cleaning. You're very welcome. Of course, it's what the world has been asking for. When am I going to get some domestic house cleaning telling me about religious philosophies? Well, now you've got it, so you don't have to worry about that anymore. Ticked off the old bucket list. I like that one because I like starting to write something with no destination in mind and simply seeing what comes out. It turned out this time that it was all that bloody stuff. Anyway, if you could share this podcast with some people, I'd massively appreciate it. We have a social media. The Instagram is Savage Balance Podcast and the Twitter is SavBalPod. We have an email address as well, savbalpod@gmail.com, and why not go check out the website? There's some really beautiful drawings from Dolly, Nelly, Gray on there, who's designed all of the wonderful artwork, in fact, and you can find that all at savbalpod.com. If you could subscribe, comment, rate, review, all those things, specifically subscribe would really help me out at this early stage. That would be cool. The music is by Danny Tonks. Thank you very much for listening, and really just go out there and bloody enjoy yourselves safely, socially, responsibly, and I'm sure I'll see you again. If not, then have a good time, but for those who will, I'll see you next week. Take it easy, look after yourselves. See you later.